Hello, everyone, and a very warm welcome to another episode of the Talkroom series of podcasts. I'm Wendy, and today we're diving into a topic that affects millions of people, but we're looking at it through a specific lens: the complex relationship between financial stress and men's mental health. Now, before we begin, it's important to acknowledge that we recently discussed women's mental health and the unique challenges women face. So, therefore, today's focus on men does not diminish these experiences or suggest that only men struggle with financial stress. We know that people of all genders face financial pressures and their mental health impacts. However, research shows that men often experience and express financial stress differently due to society expectations around the provider role, and therefore they're significantly less likely to seek help for the mental health challenges that result. So today, we want to explore those specific patterns and barriers. While we often hear about the pressure men feel to be providers, the reality is that financial stress doesn't just affect bank balances, it has really profound impacts on mental health, relationships, and overall well-being that deserve our attention and our understanding. So, for those of you who are joining us for the first time, I would like to introduce my co-presenter, Ian. Ian is a senior accredited National Counselling and Psychotherapy Society member and the founder of Hope Therapy and Counselling Services. Hope is a counselling and coaching organisation offering support throughout the UK for a wide range of concerns and challenges, and also works extensively with men navigating financial stress and the mental health challenges that accompany it. So a very warm welcome to you, Ian.
Thank you, Wendy.
Where's India come from?
And let me return the favour by introducing you. Wendy is a highly experienced CBT psychotherapist who's been involved in the field of mental health and wellbeing for well over 30 years now. We're both absolutely passionate about helping people navigate their mental health journey. And today's discussion about financial stress is particularly important given how many men struggle silently with money worries and the pressure to provide for their families. So before we dive in, I want to acknowledge something important. We know that financial stress can make accessing private therapy feel absolutely impossible. And that's a real challenge. So today we want to share some practical strategies that anyone can use, regardless of their financial situation, while also talking about when professional support might be worth prioritising.
Absolutely, Ian. So agree with all that. Very important. But let's start with the fundamental question. So, why do you think financial stress affects men differently? And what makes it such a mental health issue, specifically for men?
Yeah, and I think that's a really important question, Wendy. And it really gets to the heart of how societal expectations shape men's experiences. So, from a very young age, most men are conditioned to see themselves as providers. That may not be the PR way of looking at it nowadays, but for many people, that's how they've been brought up. There's this deep cultural narrative that says a man's worth is tied to his ability to financially support others. When that ability is threatened or feels in some way inadequate, it doesn't just create practical problems, it strikes at the absolute core of how many men understand their identity and understand their value. And research showed that men are significantly more likely than women to tie their self-esteem to their earning capacity. So when financial stress hits, it's not just about money, it's about feeling that you're failing in some way as a man, as a partner, as a father. And that's why we often see financial stress trigger things like depression, anxiety, even suicidality in some men. There's also the issue of silence as well. Men are often taught not to express vulnerability or to ask for help when they need it. So when financial stress hits, they suffer alone. They might stay awake at night worrying about the bills, but during the day, they maintain the facade that everything is absolutely fine. And it's that sense of isolation that makes the mental health impact so much worse than it might otherwise be. The physical symptoms are absolutely real too. Men often struggle with headaches or stomach problems, with sleep issues, with muscle tension. And financial stress literally changes how the body functions, which then affects their mood, affects their concentration, and has an impact on relationships and family life as well.
Absolutely, and that's just so true. And it really does highlight just how simply complex this issue is. And I'm wondering whether you could tell me a little bit more about what specific financial stressors tend to impact more on men's mental health the most.
Yeah, absolutely. And really simply, in my practice, I see several key financial stresses that particularly affect men's mental health. The first one, which is absolutely huge, is job insecurity. So that might be about fear of redundancy. Maybe it's about working in an industry that's unstable. Maybe it's about working in a job that we feel trapped in, but absolutely hate because we can't afford to actually leave that role. And the sense of being stuck creates this ongoing anxiety that affects everything else that's going on for us. There's also, for many people, a debt pressure as well, especially mortgages and credit cards or loans. Those types of things can just create this constant background stress that's just there the whole time. And men often feel personally responsible for the family debt because they see themselves as the provider. There's that sense of this is my responsibility. Even if it was a joint decision that was made, they can often feel that very personally. And there's a sense of shame around not being able to pay the bills or having to borrow money from people as well. I think also there's real issues around what we might describe as the cost of living crisis. It's hitting hard for many people, and men who previously felt financially secure, they're suddenly struggling to afford the basics. They're struggling to pay energy bills or food costs, housing. Everything feels out of reach for many people. It's particularly difficult for men who've always been able to provide in the past, and then they suddenly find themselves in a position where they can't make ends meet. They feel a sense of career pressure, a sense of comparison very often. Those things can play a really big role. Social media and workplace culture, they constantly reinforce messages about success, about earning potential. Men compare themselves to peers who seem more who appear more financially successful. And that just triggers those feelings of inadequacy and that sense of failure. And then there's a sense of family financial responsibility. And that can be hugely overwhelming for people as well. So whether it's about supporting their children, or maybe it's about being able to support their aging parents or a partner, many men feel like they're just carrying everyone's financial well-being. The pressure to pay maybe for children's education, or for them to just gone through a Christmas period, to be able to provide them with the Christmas presents that they've asked for. the pressure to be able to pay for a family holiday or just the daily expenses, those things can feel absolutely crushing for many people. And then there's what we might describe as retirement anxiety as well, especially for people in their 40s and 50s who start to realize that they haven't saved enough and they start to worry about that. How am I going to be able to support myself? How am I going to be able to support the family in older age? So there's all of those things that really start to have an impact on men's mental health.
Absolutely. And these are such real pressures that so many men face, don't they? And I suppose the impact on relationships. I'm wondering how financial stress affects men's connections with their partners and their families.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the most painful aspects of all one is that sense that financial stress doesn't just affect the man that's experiencing it, it radiates out. It radiates out to damage the relationships that he cares most about. Communication breakdown is hugely common. Men often hide financial worries from their partners, thinking that they're protecting them. But it's that secrecy that creates distance, it creates a sense of tension. And partners know that something is wrong, but they don't know exactly what it is, which can lead to misunderstandings. It can lead to a sense of conflict between partners, making situations even worse. There's irritability, there's mood changes. Those are really frequent things. So when you're constantly worried about money, small things just feel huge. They get bigger and bigger. And men can find themselves snapping at family members, withdrawing emotionally, or becoming moody without explaining why. And family members often blame themselves for those tensions. There might also be things around sexual intimacy as well, and those types of things can often suffer. Financial stress can affect things like libido and emotional availability, and men might feel too stressed to be intimate with their partners or feel like they don't deserve a physical closeness when they're not providing adequately. Again, that can just exacerbate the strain within the relationship. And then there's the thing around parenting guilt as well. And I think that can be absolutely huge. So fathers worry about not being able to give their children what they want, what they need. They might miss school events due to work stress or feel guilty about saying no to activities or purchases or worry about the example that they're setting somehow. All of those things can place a sense of guilt on people. And there's also what we might call control and power dynamics as well. So when a man feels powerless over his financial situation, he might start to try to exert control in other areas of family life, which can ultimately create conflict and a sense of resentment between partners as well. And I've often seen relationships come to an end because couples just couldn't navigate financial stress together. But I've also seen the opposite. I've also seen couples become much, much stronger when they learn to communicate about money and learn to support each other through those challenges and difficult times as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's really important to understand all those factors and how they can really affect other people in his family. It's devastating, isn't it, to think that families will split up because of that. So that's a really good introduction. Thank you so much for that, Ian. But I'm just wondering now whether we can perhaps move on to practical strategies. Can you give some examples of what men can do when they're feeling overwhelmed by financial pressure?
Yeah, a really great question again, really important question. So I want to just share some strategies that anyone can try, regardless of their financial situation. And the first thing, and you and I have talked about this in previous podcasts, is about naming the stress. So acknowledge that financial pressure is affecting your mental health. Many men try to push through without recognizing the impact, simply saying, I'm struggling with money stress. But just saying those words can be the very first step towards beginning to be able to manage it. And then just getting the facts. Anxiety thrives on uncertainty. So just sitting down and getting a clear picture of what your actual financial situation is. Write down income, expenses, debts, and often the reality is either slightly better or maybe it once we begin to look at it, just becomes a little bit more manageable than the anxiety makes it feel. Anxiety can often make us catastrophize a situation. So just getting a really clear idea of what it actually is, the reality of it. And then just focusing on the things that you can control. You can't control the economy. You can't control your boss's decisions. But you can control your spending. You can control your job search efforts or your skill development. So just channeling your energy towards actionable steps around things that you can actually control. And then I think just breaking problems down. If we just say, I have money problems, that can feel really quite overwhelming. But once we start setting a more tangible narrative around what our needs and expectations are, it can start becoming a little bit more manageable. If we were to say, I need to reduce my monthly expenses by £200, that starts to take on a slightly more tangible feel, a more manageable feel to it. So just making very specific but achievable goals rather than trying to solve the whole situation all in one go. And then I think challenging what we might describe as catastrophic thinking. So financial stress makes our minds jump to the worst case scenario. So just practice asking those questions around what evidence do I have that this worst outcome will actually happen? And most feared outcomes are unlikely. So, really starting to challenge some of the fears that we have in our minds. And then just remembering to maintain that sense of that sense of perspective. So remember times maybe that you faced difficult situations before and to remind yourself that you've gotten through those things. Your worth as a person isn't just determined by your bank balance or your ability to provide everything your family wants. You as a person are much, much more than just how much money is coming into your bank account, however much it might feel like that in that moment. And then we can look at things like stress management as well. I think it's really important to stress that financial stress is stress and your body needs healthy ways to process it. So thinking about things like exercise or adequate sleep, about relaxation techniques. These things aren't luxuries when you're financially stressed. They're absolute necessities, the same as they are when we're feeling stress about anything else. So those are some of the things that we might think about, Wendy.
Yeah, thank you. And they're really good, very practical steps. So thank you for that, Ian. That's most appreciated. I'm just thinking of another area to cover. And what about how men may need to communicate about the financial stress? How do they go about that with partners, family, or employers?
Yeah, and often that can be one of the hardest things for men. And I hear that within my practice and Hope's practice all the time. But it's actually really fundamental. It's so important. And I think with partners, the first thing just to say is honesty is absolutely crucial. Start with something like, I've been worried about our finances and it's affecting my mood. Something as simple as that. I'd like us to look at this together. So don't dump all your anxiety on them, but don't hide away from it either. And financial planning should be a team effort. If this is our partner, they are our partner, and that encompasses everything. And I think when we're looking at children, I think age appropriate honesty can actually be really helpful. So you don't need to share the absolute details of everything, but saying, we need to be more careful with money right now, can help them understand why you might say no to certain things. And then I think when we're talking about work, if financial stress is affecting our performance at work, then maybe speaking with a HR department or speaking to your manager. And many companies have employee assistance programs as well. And those programs can often be available to people just to offer things like flexible working arrangements, things of that nature. So there are people that we can speak to in the workplace. And then I think just seeking practical support as well. There are professional organizations out there which can offer completely free advice, things like citizens advice or step change. And there are other organizations that offer advice where there is absolutely no cost. You just go to them, you speak to them, they're experts in those fields. They've heard every situation before. So there's nothing that you're going to say to them which is going to shock them in any way. And they are experienced at supporting people in these really challenging situations. So the message I would say is just don't suffer alone when help and professional help is available. And just remembering asking for help isn't a weakness. It's about taking responsibility for solving the problem that you find yourself in.
Okay, thank you, Ian. That's really valuable advice. Thank you. That's really good. I'm just thinking maybe the next step is to address when self-help strategies just simply might not be enough. So, when should someone consider, say, professional support for financial stress?
Again, a really important question, Wendy. There are clear signs, I think, when professional support becomes necessary. So I would say that if financial stress is causing sleep problems, if it's starting to affect appetite changes, or there are physical symptoms that we might be experiencing, things that persist for more than maybe a couple of weeks, that's a sign that your body is telling you that this stress is becoming unmanageable. I also think when relationships are suffering significantly as well. So if you're having frequent arguments about money, if your partner says that you've changed in some way, or if you're starting to withdraw from family and friends, if you're experiencing things like depression or anxiety type symptoms, persistent low mood, hopelessness, panic, constant worry that interferes with daily functioning. I also think when work performance is affected as well. So if you can't concentrate, if you're starting to make mistakes or you're avoiding work responsibilities because of financial worry. And I think really importantly, if there are any thoughts around self-harm or feelings like others would be better off without you, those types of things require immediate professional support as well. And also, if you're turning to things like alcohol or gambling or any other form of substance abuse or any other form of addictive behavior, really, to cope with financial stress, those are really important signs to be looking out for. I think it's really important to say, and we often say this, it's important that you don't wait until you're in crisis. If you've been struggling with financial stress for months, or if it keeps coming back, therapy can help you to develop better coping strategies before things become completely unmanageable for you. I also want to address something really directly. We know therapy costs money. And when you're financially stressed, that can feel absolutely impossible. Just one more thing to spend our money on. But what I often say to clients is financial stress often costs more than people realize. Lost productivity, health problems, relationship damage, poor financial decisions that we make whilst we're under stress. Those things can cost thousands and thousands of pounds in the long run, alongside the damage to relationships and family unity as well. So For some men, a few therapy sessions can save money by helping them think more clearly about solutions, to communicate better with partners and to manage stress more effectively as well. It really is about trying to get a sense of proportionality and balance with these things.
Absolutely. And that's such an important perspective, Ian. I totally agree with that. But there's bound to be some men who are listening now and thinking, I simply cannot afford therapy. So what would you say to them?
So if you're thinking that if you're thinking that, I can completely understand. And I hear clients say that on a very regular basis. So let's just be really honest about what the options are. First, try the free options. That there's strategies that we've talked about today that are completely free of charge that anybody can do. So for men, these self-help approaches combined with some practical financial advice that you may get from places like Citizens Advice can really make a difference. So thinking about those free options, first of all, and then you might check if your employer offers an employee assistance program. Some companies do offer free counselling or a certain number of sessions every year to their employees. So just thinking about, is that something that's offered? Some people find that they're able to access NHS services. Waiting lists can be problematic sometimes, but there can sometimes be free support for anxiety and depression. So thinking about those as options. And some therapists are able to offer reduced rates or payment plans in certain situations. So at Hope, for example, we always offer a completely free 15-minute consultation where we just go through things. We spend time listening to the client, understanding exactly what's going on, and then we talk about what we're able to offer. And it's never about trying to monetize that. If there are free options that are going to work better for the client, we will talk about those options as well. So we're completely honest that Hope Therapy is a private practice. We're not a charity, but we also believe everyone deserves support. So we try to be as flexible as we possibly can. I know you operate a very similar thing. You'll speak to clients. There's never any pressure about having that conversation. And many counselors will offer something very similar to that. So the most important thing is that you don't have to suffer alone, whether that support comes from completely free resources like workplace programs, or whether you decide eventually that private therapy might, or maybe even just a small number of sessions, maybe the way for you to go. What really matters is that you reach out to somebody to get the help that you really need.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's a really important message, isn't it? Is to actually seek the help and not to wait till you're in crisis. That's a mantra, isn't it? That's hopefully people hear from this podcast. So very good, Ian. Yes, definitely. Before we wrap up, would you want men to remember what is the most important thing from today's conversation?
Yeah, so I think there's several key messages that I really hope that men generally, in particular men that are struggling, take away. And the first, I think, is just that your worth as a man isn't determined by your bank balance. I know society can sometimes tell you otherwise, but your value comes from who you are, not what you provide financially. Everybody goes through a challenging time in their lives sometimes. The second thing is that financial stress is a mental health issue, not a character flaw. It's not about being weak. It's not about failing in some way. It's about dealing with real pressures that affect your brain and affect your body. So these aren't fake things, these are real things that really exist. And that you don't have to handle it alone. So whether it's talking to family, whether it's seeking financial advice from a professional, getting professional support for your mental health. Reaching out for help is a sign of strength and of responsibility. And I think it's really important that people remember that small steps matter. We don't have to deal with everything on day one. We can just take small incremental steps. Focus on what you can control today, this week, this month. Put your focus in those areas. And also, financial situations can change as well. So, what can feel permanent, utterly overwhelming and hopeless today, may look very different in 3 months or 6 months or 12 months' time. So, don't make permanent decisions today based on temporary financial stresses. Just remembering that taking care of your mental health isn't selfish, it's absolutely essential. When you manage financial stress effectively, you're better able to make good decisions. You're better able to maintain relationships and to actually improve your financial situation. Financial stress is temporary. Your mental health and relationships are absolutely what matter in the longer term.
That's so important. And thank you so much, Ian. And I'm just wondering if someone has listened to this podcast and feels that they might benefit from professional support because of their financial stress, what should they do next?
Yeah, really good question. And thank you for asking it, Wendy. If people are looking for support, there are organisations like Hope Therapy and Counselling services out there to offer that support. We've got a large team of experienced counsellors and therapists who understand the unique pressures that financial stress can create. So people are very welcome to go and take a look at our website, www.hopeforminds.co.uk. That's www.hopeforminds.co.uk. There are various completely free resources, detailed information on there about how we can offer support for men or for those people that are concerned about men as well, just to support people through those difficult times. As I said earlier, we offer a completely free of charge consultation. There's never any pressure placed on people. And if there are other free options that we think are better or more suited, then we can talk about those things as well. And we also do work with many employee assistance programs. So just check with your employer as well. And for some people, sessions may be covered. But I think the most important thing is just to remember seeking support during financial difficulties isn't a sign of weakness. I keep repeating that. It's about taking responsibility for your well-being and your family's well-being as well. So when you take care of your mental health, you become better equipped to handle the financial stresses that you find yourself in. And Wendy, you're a hugely experienced therapist. You've worked with many people who are struggling with all sorts of stresses, including financial stress and the resultant relationship and mental health challenges that can come from that. I wonder whether you would like to just say a little bit about how people could get in touch with you as well.
Yes, certainly, Ian. So on my website, which is wendycastellino.com, I do actually have a number of free downloadable ebooks, and one is about men and stress. So it does give you some totally free, some practical advice. It's very easy and simple to read, bullet point type things. That's just free to download. And I'm always very happy to help people with a brief consultation. And also I'm part of an employee assistance program as well. So I work with several agencies who provide that service. So as I agree with you, it's well worth asking your company whether they do provide that for you. So that was such a good discussion, and thank you so much, Ian. And thank you everybody else for listening to today's discussion about financial stress and men's mental health. And remember that financial stress, it is a real challenge and it really can affect your mental health. And there's no shame in struggling with it. Just remember that your worth isn't determined by your bank balance, and you don't have to handle this alone. So please don't forget to subscribe, rate, and share this episode with anybody else who you think might benefit from hearing that, so that they don't feel alone in dealing with the financial pressure and its impact on mental health. So take good care of yourselves, and remember, you deserve the support and understanding, especially during these financially difficult times. Thank you for listening.
Thank you, Wendy. Thank you, everyone.